We couldn't be more pleased that there have been so many new subscribers to this network. And people have always asked, why didn't this network have more? You can make that happen. Subscribe right now. Hit the button, press the bell icon to be notified when we put up great new content, and join the Audrain Museum Network family. Hello and welcome to the Audrain Automobile Museum and our new exhibition, Stars of 30 Audrain Exhibitions. This is a celebration of the 9 years the museum has been in existence and the more than 300 vehicles that have been displayed in our gallery here on Bellevue Avenue and for the last few years on YouTube across the world. What we're doing here in these highlights videos is looking at some of the different ages of cars and how they've been represented in our exhibitions and why. And for this first one, we're going to take a look at early cars. And I'm joined here by a museum coordinator, Alex Cull.
Hi, Dom.
And we're here because, Alex, I know that you have a particular affinity towards these early cars, and specifically because of what they represent in terms of the development of the automobile and its sociological impact. So we're standing next to a great example of that right here, this 1911 Roush & Lang.
1912?
1911?
Or 12.
Or 12, depends. You know, it's actually, that's a very interesting point that this car has been identified as both a 1911 and a 1912. Mm-hmm. And one of our great friends, the wonderful expert Evan Ide, who is absolutely the early car savant,
brilliant,
has looked at this car very carefully and determined that by his reckoning, this is indeed a 1911. Mm-hmm. Roush & Lang was such a fascinating company, and this was made at the very peak of the electric car market.
Yeah, they started as a luxury carriage maker. The storyline between a lot of these early cars is they were doing something else, whether it was Winton making bicycles or, again, them making carriages. In Cleveland, you had a bike shop or a carriage shop or a blacksmith shop. You tried your hand at making cars. And we got some wonderful vehicles out of it and some extremely high-end luxury vehicles like this Roush & Lang.
Well, one of the things, of course, early cars were very much the plaything of the rich. Yep. But, as we said, at this point in time, it was a very interesting point because no one really knew what the dominant propulsive force would be, mm-hmm. whether it be steam, electricity, or the gasoline-powered internal combustion engine. Mm-hmm. And thinking about the fact that this car was a very expensive car at the time, but the Model T had just been introduced a few years before, so the automotive landscape was going to change dramatically in a very short time.
Yeah, so what this car, I think, retailed around $2,500 or so, and a Model T you get for $800, a Curved Dash for $650. Most people are only making $500 or $600 a year at that time, so this was out of reach for a lot of people. But you can even see that in the advertising. The marketing is towards the luxurious client, the high-end client, to make their life easier because it's simple to use and a breeze to turn on. You don't have to mess with a dirty gasoline car or boil steam. You just get in it and go.
And one of the things that you'll be seeing in these highlights videos are also how different cars were used in different exhibitions. So the context is really interesting. Yep. This car is being shown here in this exhibition in the context of its appearance in our wonderful show in collaboration with the Newport Historical Society, mm-hmm. Women Take the Wheel. Yep. And in fact, this car was delivered to a woman new, the mother of the great sportsman Briggs Cunningham. Mm-hmm. And it was also quite interesting that this car is also featured in our early landmarks in automotive engineering, yep. because of what it represented with the electric propulsion. And the funny thing is the fact that there are so many people who think electric cars are new. Yeah. And one of the things that this exhibition, Early Landmarks in Automotive Engineering, really pointed out, well, to me, it's how I feel personally, that with the exception of electronics, mm-hmm. just about everything that we have in cars today was invented before World War I. Yep. Electrics, hybrids, steam. It was absolutely astonishing. And the pace of development was so rapid. I think it makes it so exciting for you, certainly.
Yeah, well, even features on cars, whether from the brakes or to luxury items like power windows, power tops, and stuff like that, while not present in some of these cars, the technology was available, it just hadn't been put into the car yet.
Exactly. The inclusion of things that were, people didn't have electricity in their homes, many people, and people were driving electric cars. Now, one of the other things, of course, as a part of the early story of cars, we have here this wonderful 1907 Renault 3545 AI.
One of my personal favorites.
A great car, bought new and delivered to Willie K. Vanderbilt, a great Newport story. Not that actually, Briggs Cunningham's mother is also sort of an oblique Newport story, since obviously Briggs Cunningham was winner of the America's Cup. But nonetheless, we digress a bit. But that Renault is also quite a remarkable thing, because many people have a very sort of established concept of what a supercar is. And if you haven't been exposed to cars like this Renault, when you realize that in 1907, here's a car capable of 100 miles per hour on the public roads.
And at that time, very few paved roads. So on dirt roads, it's even more terrifying. You and Jay did a video driving this, and you see the wheels going down the road, and they're not exactly perfectly aligned. And to think that 80, 100 miles an hour is scary to me.
So I thought it's also another very interesting point, which is driving. It's remarkable to me that you can actually drive these cars on modern roads. I mean, these cars can be operated, 100 years after they were created, in the manner in which their creators intended, but also realizing that these cars were designed to drive mostly on gravel or dirt roads. They had paved roads in the cities, and as soon as you got out of the city limits, boom.
It's something that I learned very quickly when working here, is we treat these cars with kid gloves. We take care of them as if they're fragile. But the reality is, especially what taught me this was the Model T, these cars are extremely durable. They had to be. They had no choice, because people wouldn't buy them if they broke after a year or they broke driving on dirt roads. So cars like this, they have this reputation, I think, again, for being old and delicate, but much more robust than modern cars in certain ways.
Absolutely, and one of the things, of course, that the Renault was created for, Willie K. went to Europe, he saw the Renaults race in 1906 in the Grand Prix races very successfully, and he said, I want one of those and I can sell 9 more to my friends. So Renault, build me 10 of these cars, and they did. And of course, that was a time when manufacturers all raced because they wanted to prove the durability and viability of their cars. So racing and durability and robustness was a very important part of the automotive scene. And stepping back to this, the Renault was also in the exhibition, Women Take the Wheel. And we have here a little sample, a Duster from the period of this Roush and Lang. And one of the things that was so wonderful about that exhibition was that it combined clothing with the cars. The Historical Society had been given a long-term loan of Vanderbilt women's clothing dating from the 1880s to 1945. They showed the 19th century portion in their galleries, and we showed the 20th century portion in ours, matched and paired with cars. And it was remarkable, again, from a sociological standpoint, that women's fashions were completely changed by the arrival of the automobile.
I think it's a great example of form follows function. So fashion is a great way to see what's going on in the period, because you had, even though fashion didn't come first with the activity, you had to have the fashion to go along with the activity. You couldn't get in a car with a big hoop skirt. You needed something sleek. You needed a jacket to keep the dust off you. You needed this, I call it the beekeeper outfit, to keep the bugs or help with the wind. So I think fashion is a great way of seeing what came just before and how fashion adapted to it, excuse me. It
is exactly that. The women's fashions of the 1880s you couldn't wear to ride in a car, much less drive one. And when you realize that you get to 1911 and 1912, and there are women driving themselves. I mean, the emancipation that automobiles brought to women was absolutely remarkable. And that emancipation even continued as well for not just women, but also, for instance, people of color. All of a sudden, you didn't have to worry about segregated trains or buses when you could get into your own car and drive where you wanted to go when you wanted to get there.
I think that's a theme that even continues today. When you turn 16, your license is a symbol of freedom away from your parents or from, again, the buses or the trains. You can go wherever you want, whenever you want.
The automobile has been and will remain a symbol of emancipation for incredible groups. Now, one of the other things which is so interesting to me as well is the fact, as you said, we take, people who watch this network know that you've seen us on the road in these cars. You've seen me driving this on driving videos. You've seen me and Jay in the Renault. all these cars are meant to be used. And I think that's a really important part of our mission, how we express it as well. So all the cars you'll hear about in this exhibition have all been out on the road.
There's art you can use. I think when we had the supercar exhibit, Ralph Lauren had a great quote about it's art you can touch and feel. It's not the Mona Lisa that's supposed to hang on your wall. The only thing I think that's worse than something happening to these cars on the road is nothing happening to them. They need to be driven. They need to be used. If something breaks, it's sort of the nature of what they were intended for. It is nothing that can't be fixed.
That is brilliant, Alex. I'm not saying I'm going to quote you. I'm going to steal that line, and I probably won't give you credit.
That's
so
fine.
All the people watching this, you didn't hear Alex say that. You heard me say it for the first time the next time I say it. And even for a vehicle like this Roush & Lang, which, with the exception of the fenders and the upholstery on the seats, is completely original.
It's amazing.
We've taken this car out on the road. We took this car to the Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance, where it was exhibited in the alternative propulsion class and took a third in class. So these cars can be driven. I drove this on the tour at Pebble Beach. It was a lot of fun. These cars can be used if you use them responsibly and carefully.
Yes.
So let's take another look at one of our early cars in this exhibition that tells another wonderful story about both technology and history.
Let's go.
The car we're in front of right now, Alex, is a very important car in the context of this exhibition because this 1912 Packard Model 30 7-passenger tourer was in the very first exhibition here at the Audrain in October 2014.
Wow.
And it's a marvelous example, again, of a really classic, very dramatic brass era car. This particular car has an amazing provenance because it was owned by Phil Hill, the great race car driver, American Formula One champion, who after his racing career ended, went into the automotive restoration business, started a company called Hill & Vaughan, and he was a big Packard fan, grew up with Packards in his family, and so he restored this car, took it to Pebble Beach, where it was an early winner at Pebble Beach, and then his son took it back to Pebble Beach twice. This car has won its class at Pebble Beach 3 times. Absolutely extraordinary. And it is such an amazing car. This car also featured in our 7th exhibition, big, bold, and brassy, and you can tell why, because it's a very dramatic and beautifully decorated car. And it also featured in another exhibition, Shining Bright, Advances in Automotive Lighting. So this has been featured in 3 very different contexts, and that's one of the other things that we'll explore in these detailed videos, because seeing the cars in the collection in different settings with other cars, I think helps to teach us a lot about the cars and about the automotive scene in general.
Well, yeah, there's multiple stories to tell about each car, whether it's like I said, the provenance of who owned it and who restored it, or the engineering, mechanical history, like the headlights, or the performance history or the role it played in society. I've been calling this car, one of the first SUVs. It kind of gives that air of you had stuff to do when you were in this. You were moving people, moving things, so it was a useful thing to have around.
This car also is quite remarkable. One of the things I love about it, obviously it was a very expensive car when it was new. And again, things that we think of as being sort of newish in cars. This car actually has a heater for the rear seat. Also, it was in Shining Bright for these wonderful acetylene headlights. And one of the disadvantages of an acetylene headlight was the fact that you had to get out of the car, turn the tank on, open up the headlight, light it yourself. This car has a headlight self-lighter inside as well. So, I mean, the sort of the march in advance of automotive technologies was so rapid and so interesting, and allows us to tell so many interesting stories. We featured some other early cars in the museum, and one exhibition I know that you enjoyed very much was the early landmarks in automotive engineering, because it also featured our 1886 Benz Patent Motorwagen replica.
Oh yeah.
And there was a wonderful vista. As soon as you walked through the door of the gallery, you saw that 1886 Benz Patent Motorwagen replica, and across the room you saw the 1939 Alfa Romeo 6C 2500, and you think, wow, 40 years separate these two vehicles. It's remarkable.
It's amazing to see the jump from horseless carriage to automobile in just that short time. Yeah, with the Benz motor wagon, it's amazing that a 1-cylinder engine could be useful and reliable. Today we're so used to having 12, 8, 6 cylinders. And Packard gets credit for the first production 12-cylinder, actually. And it wasn't even about power at the time, it was about smoothness. You wanted that power easy to come easy, and I had to have a small engine working hard.
And it's also quite interesting as we look at the progression in automotive power. At the very beginning, you wanted to go faster, you built a bigger engine.
Yep.
And then it got to the point where the engineers realized, I can make a smaller engine with smaller pistons that turns a little faster and it gives me even more power for less penalty of weight.
Yep.
And it's also very interesting because in addition to these Packards, like you just described, our Twin 6 was also a wonderful car which we featured in a number of our exhibitions here. And this wonderful Model 30, we also had the reason why the Packard existed, which is the fact that he had bought a Winton and was terribly dissatisfied and went to Winton to complain about it and went and said, fine, build your own car. So we featured in another one of our exhibitions a wonderful 1901 Winton.
It's a story that seems to be, again, common throughout early automobiling history. If you don't like it, go build your own. That's why we have Lamborghini and now why we have Packard.
And it's also, again, thinking about historical context. We think nothing about getting into the car and taking a nice long drive, from state to state or across the country. It was a Winton that was made the first transcontinental drive on a bet. So, you can just imagine what the adventure was like driving one of these cars in a time when, as we discussed before, very few of the roads were paved. So you look at a car like this and you think, well, it's really fancy and all this. This car was designed to drive in conditions that many of us wouldn't drive in today. Some of the SUVs that are built today could not handle the roads that this car was built to handle.
As we discussed before, these cars may be old, but they're not fragile. They're very tough.
It's an astonishing thing, and it is such a wonderful thing to be able to see these cars. This exhibition has been the most popular exhibition so far that we've ever mounted in the museum. And I think one of the things, well, before I give my opinion, why do you think it's so popular when you see our visitor guests come in?
You get to see the beginning to end of the automobile, almost the complete story. We go from 1907 to 2013. So there's obviously a lot going on before then and after then, but you can get the general idea of automotive history in less than 20 cars. You can see everything or the major developments that happened in an hour. You can learn that.
It's absolutely astonishing. And Alex, thank you for helping take our visitors and our viewers on this journey. And we'll be back for more exciting highlights of stars of 30 Audrain exhibitions in our next video.